This is a demonstration of my solution to the CS50 AI Heredity project. In the terminal on the left, I have illustrated the dataset family0.csv. We see that there are two parents, Lily and James, whose parents are unknown. James exhibits the trait and Lily does not. And we have one child, Harry, of parents Lily and James, and we don't know whether he exhibits the trait or not. When I run the Heredity program on this input, we get the following, the output on the right, and let's do a few sanity checks to make sure that we think the results are at least reasonable. We see that in fact James does exhibit the trait, Lily does not, with 100% probability, and we see that Lily has the number of copies of the gene exhibited here with 98% chance of 0 copies and almost 0 chance of 2 copies. James exhibits most likely 1 copy of the gene with 51% probability, followed by 0 copies at 29% and 2 copies at 20%. We can pretty easily estimate how many copies of the gene Harry should have. The most likely scenario is that Lily does not have the gene with 98% probability, so let's just assume that's 100% for the purposes of estimation. Then there are 2 ways for, assuming no mutations, which is a small perturbation, there's 2 ways that Harry can get the gene. With 51% probability, James will have 1 copy of the gene, in which case half the time he'll pass on the gene to Harry, and then 20% of the time James will have 2 copies of the gene, and he will necessarily pass on a copy of the gene to Harry. And since Lily gives 0 copies of the gene to Harry, then Harry will have 1 copy. That is, there are 2 ways to get 1 copy of the gene to Harry, and we can perform this simple calculation and get 0.4529, which is very close to the result of 0.4557. And then the difference, of course, is due to both mutations as well as our assumption that Lily had 0 copies of the gene with 100% probability. So we have a sanity check that it looks like makes it look like our calculation is right. We can run the program for the other 2 data sets. And this result is more complicated than I'll try to analyze by hand, but the program does execute and give those results that can be checked by presumably some automated process, and the program works on family2.csv as well. This concludes my demonstration